In terms of the protocols that we should all be undertaking to, buttress our microbiome, you're not necessarily advising a specific type of diet other than to say plant diversity is king. Like this is the vector of all vectors for you, right? So it's not about, it's vegan it's a predominantly plant-based or plant-based diet, but the diversity of plants is really what's important in terms of making sure that you're doing everything you can in the interest of your microbiome.
Well, I think the critical piece to me, so, the book is called Fiber Fueled, and that's because I feel like fiber has been this ignored superfood.
Well, it also needs a new publicist.
It desperately needs a new publicist.
You are that publicist. You are, yes, you're hired.
I'm the guy. So yeah, no, I'm here to fight on behalf of fiber and get it back on the map and part of the conversation, because we've been ignoring it, and part of it is that we've been thinking about it as this orange drink that grandma stirs up so that she can poop, when in fact it's incredible the connection between fiber and our gut microbiome. Fiber doesn't just go in the mouth and shoot out the other end. Soluble fiber is a specific sort of general category which feeds the microbiome. This is their preferred food. And when we give this to them, they consume it. They grow stronger. Our microbes actually multiply, grow stronger. And then they turn around and they reward us. And the way that they reward us is by releasing short-chain fatty acids. And these short-chain fatty acids have healing effects throughout the entire body. So, we've been emphasizing a little bit the immune system. Short-chain fatty acids optimize our immune system. There are studies that we could talk about if you want to, connecting short-chain fatty acids in terms of protection from respiratory viruses. They can have their effect in the lungs on the immune system. Short-chain fatty acids reverse leaky gut, which is, dysbiosis. That is the root cause of these digestive issues that I take care of on a daily basis. They directly prevent colon cancer. They lower our cholesterol. They prevent and reverse insulin resistance, which is type 2 diabetes. They travel throughout the entire body, having their healing effects. We think that they can actually reverse coronary artery disease. We think that they can actually repair the blood-brain barrier for people that have brain fog. They actually travel into the brain through the blood-brain barrier, and they have their effect. They affect our mood, our memory. They affect, believe it or not, we have studies that suggest that they prevent Alzheimer's disease. These are incredibly powerful. And the way that you get them is through the consumption of fiber in your diet. And here's the problem. 97% of Americans are not getting an adequate amount of fiber in their diet. And that's creating issues for us.
Everybody's worried about their protein intake, but they don't give a second thought to their fiber intake. 97% of people are fiber deficient. That's a shocking statistic.
And that's with low standards. The expectation or the standard that we're holding is 25 grams for women and 38 grams for men. And the average American is somewhere in the 15 to 18 gram range. And, you see the problem exists, Rich, when we try to do academic studies looking at fiber. And the way that we'll set the study up is we'll say, okay, let's take the high fiber consumers in the United States and compare them to the low fiber consumers. And next time, you guys, if you ever read any of these studies, I'm a nerd, so I read these studies. If you ever read one of these studies, take a look at the high fiber consumers. Even the high fiber consumers are deficient in fiber.
Wow. Unlike the Hunza, which you talk about, right?
Hunza. Yeah, the Hunza, which is this tribe that lives in Tanzania, they're fascinating because they are modern hunters and gatherers. They don't farm. They don't have organized agriculture. They live off the land. They eat whatever is available. Yes, they eat some meat. And so, but they eat mostly plants. And these Hadza are consuming 100 grams of fiber per day. And critical piece, like Rich, let me ask you a question. I'm just curious. So I know you eat a very healthy diet. If you had to estimate in a given week, how many plants do you think you have in your diet? Give me a general idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably, I mean, it's going to be higher than most, but it can't be more than, I mean, 30, 40.
Okay. And I would challenge the people listening at home right now. Like if you have to hit the pause button, take a minute and think about how many plants you actually have in your diet. Okay. So most Americans are definitely less than 30. The majority are around 15 to 20.
Mm-hmm.
And the Hadza are consuming 600 varieties of plants in a given year.
Right. Like 600.
600 because they live off the land. There are literally 300,000 edible plants on the planet. The problem is that we've narrowed it down to the point where 75% of our diet is from 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And we're ignoring this diversity. We've put pressure, unfortunately, on our farmers where the farmer has no choice but to opt for high yield breeds of crops. And so we are narrowing down the biodiversity within our diet through our food systems.
And so with the Hadza, I presume that they have lower incidences of all of these chronic ailments as a result of this biodiverse, plant-forward diet.
They have their challenges. They don't live in the United States with the healthcare system. They don't have access to a guy like me, right? But when we actually look at their microbiome, what we look at is the diversity of species. Okay, so biodiversity is a really important word these days. And the biodiversity within your gut microbiome is a measure of health. The more species that you have, the more that your gut microbiome is resistant to sort of disturbances. It has all the different players that are available. They're not all the same. They have different roles. So when you have that diversity, you have all the pieces that you need, no matter what you throw at your gut. It's ready to step up and do the job.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want that biodiversity. And when we study the Hadza and we compare their biodiversity within their gut microbiome to that of a person that's, say, in the UK, we see that they have 30% more diversity than a person in the UK. And, I hate to break it to all the Americans who are listening right now, but we're even worse. They have 40% more biodiversity than we do. And the connection that's really important for people to understand, and frankly, if there's only one thing that you take away from this podcast, listening to us have this conversation today, this is what I want you guys to hear, okay? The way that it works is this. Fiber is not just fiber. There are millions, if not billions, of types of fiber in nature. It's so incredibly complicated from a chemistry perspective that we're not even capable of creating an estimate to how many types of fiber there are. But every single plant has its own unique types of fiber, multiple different types within that plant. Every single plant is going to have prebiotic fiber that feeds the microbiome. This is their preferred food, these prebiotic fibers. And the key is that they are picky eaters. They're like us. You have different food preferences than I do, even though I'm sure that many people would label us as having the same diet. You eat differently than I do. We have our own preferences. And they do too. They have specific food preferences in terms of the different types of fiber. To put in perspective, take a black bean. You give these microbes a black bean, and there are certain specific species that are going to multiply and thrive, and they're going to be stronger and be more prepared to help you because you just fed them. They are energized. But the opposite is true. You take that black bean away, you say, I'm going black bean free. Those same microbes that were thriving because you were feeding them are starving.
Right.
And they're not getting what they need. And so, Rich, this looking at the Hadza and comparing it to Americans and seeing 40% more biodiversity within their microbiome, that's interesting. That's cool. But to me, I wouldn't write a book based upon an idea. And that is not enough for me to say with confidence that the most important thing for our gut microbiome is the diversity of plant species. I need something more. And where you find it is the American Gut Project. The American Gut Project is the largest study to date to take our diet and lifestyle and connect it to the biodiversity within our gut microbiome. It is actually an international study, even though it's called the American Gut Project. They have people who are participating from over 40 countries from around the world. And there is no study more positioned to answer this question. What is the number one predictor of a healthy gut microbiome? And when they analyzed this, it was clear cut. The number one predictor of a healthy gut microbiome is the diversity of plants within your diet. And so when we set off this question, you said, well, you're not necessarily ascribing to a specific diet. Well, here's why. So I'm vegan, you're vegan, okay? But in this study, diversity of plants was more powerful than being vegan.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are vegan and you eat the same 10 or 15 foods every single day, you are not feeding your microbiome. And there are alternative diets that you could do where if you really focus on diversity of plants within your diet, you're going to feed your microbiome and do a better job.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's not about the label that we apply. It's about understanding the concept, which is that it's critically important to the health of our gut microbiome that we incorporate as many different varieties as possible. And in the American Gut Project, the line that they drew in the sand was 30 different plants per week.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, that there's a magic, difference between 30 and 29, or that 35 isn't better than 30. The point is we want as much diversity as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the critical piece.
Yeah, that's super interesting and also so different from the way that we're kind of wired. Like as humans, we want to know, all right, tell me what food is the best and I'll eat that. Or, just give me the list of the 5 things that I need and I'll focus on that. Whereas you're saying, look, you got to broaden the aperture here and you got to be trying lots of different things and, explore. And it's not about like, you need to eat these 3 things. It's about basically, eating as many different things as possible and getting out of your comfort zone a little bit. And I think what you're saying essentially is that the more that you're in the practice of doing that, it's almost like an insurance policy that you're taking out for your gut health. You're seeding your gut with the biota that will then ultimately be able to grow and thrive the more that you're feeding it those types of plants.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And just to kind of pick up where you left off, every single plant has its own unique types of fiber. That's what I've been talking about for the last few minutes.
Uh-huh.
But there's so much more. Every single plant has vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals. Like, I don't know how much your listeners have heard, I'm sure they have, about phytochemicals. These are the unique chemicals that you will find in plant foods, exclusive to plant foods. That's what phyto means. There's at least 8,000 of them. Very few of them have we actually studied. An example of one is resveratrol. So you hear about resveratrol, it's resveratrol is capable of actually changing the microbiome by itself. David Sinclair in Lifespan talks about resveratrol and its benefits for healthy aging. And this is just one example of one phytochemical that you'll find in these plants. And the other thing, by the way, that's kind of interesting, most people don't realize this. The plants have a microbiome of their own. Every single plant. So,
yeah, you don't really think about that.
No, you don't really think about that, but they're not sterile.
Mm-hmm.
Every single life on this planet either has a microbiome or is a part of the microbiome. And depending on how you choose to zoom out, you could almost make the argument that us humans are part of a larger microbiome in a way, right? Which is planetary health and the way that it all functions. But these plants have their own microbiome. If you take an apple, for example, because we have a study that shows this, the apple has a microbiome that is there from the seed, from like literally the seed through the flower and all the way through to the fruit. And that microbiome is dynamically evolving and changing and helping this transformational process to occur. And the apple has literally over 1,000 species of microbes, more than us humans do. And potentially 100 million microbes. And so when you eat an apple, you're getting the fiber, you're getting the phytochemicals, of which there are many, you're getting the vitamins and the minerals, and you're even getting the microbiome that the apple contains.
Right. Wow.
And so each plant has a story like that. Each plant has something positive that it wants to bring to your health. Every single one wants to bring something to your health. And if we overemphasize the superfoods, we can, I could eat kale all day and I'll have vitamin K dripping out of my eyeballs, okay? Way more than my body needs, but I'll make myself deficient in other things because I'll be overemphasizing certain things and I'll be missing out on the other opportunities. I personally would rather take 10 mediocre plants and put that in my diet than one superfood. I mean, I honestly think that the diversity, because you play off of the strengths of all of them. And when you have that, you get all of the amino acids, you get all the different types of fiber to feed your microbiome, you get all the different phytochemicals. You just can't get it done with one plant. There's no perfect plant.
Right. Diversification, just like we need to do with our finances, right?